I'm Kelly Morgan, 46 years old, and the proud owner of Morgan Interior Design, a company I built from nothing. Yesterday, I opened my front door to find my estranged family standing there. Parents now elderly, my brother's face lined with regret after 30 years of silence. The shock froze me in place. Once I had dreams of the perfect family, but those shattered when lies destroyed everything I knew at 16. Standing there, decades of emotions crashed over me like a tidal wave. Before I tell you how a 16-year-old girl survived being thrown out and rebuilt her entire life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you believe that no matter how deeply buried truth always finds its way to light. My family looked perfect from the outside. My father, James, was a successful structural engineer, my mother, Martha, taught 4th grade at the local elementary school, and my younger brother, Derek, was 3 years my junior. We lived in a comfortable 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb outside Boston, Massachusetts, where seasonal changes painted our neighborhood in postcard-worthy scenes. My earliest memories sparkle with moments that suggested a happy childhood. Every summer, we would pack our station wagon and drive to Cape Cod, where we rented the same beachfront cottage. I remember building sandcastles with Derek, collecting seashells along the shore, and falling asleep to the rhythm of crashing waves. During Christmas, our house transformed with twinkling lights and the scent of my mother's famous gingerbread cookies. In those snapshots, we were the ideal American family. But beneath that polished surface ran undercurrents I couldn't name until I was older. From my earliest memories, Derek received preferential treatment. When we both asked for toys, his requests were granted while mine were too expensive or not practical. On birthdays, his celebrations were elaborate affairs with friends from school and neighborhood kids, while mine were simple family dinners with one modest gift. I learned to compensate by excelling academically. My report cards displayed perfect grades, hoping each A would earn the approval I craved. I volunteered to wash dishes, fold laundry, and help my mother with dinner preparations without being asked. I joined every academic club and brought home awards and certificates that briefly captured parental attention before being tucked away in drawers. Nothing was ever enough. If I received an A on a difficult test, the question was why I hadn't been selected for the advanced placement program. If I won second place in the science fair, the focus was on why I hadn't won first. Meanwhile, Derek's average grades were celebrated, his minimal household contributions praised as exceptional helpfulness. My relationship with Derek was complicated. I loved him with the protective instinct of an older sister, yet his behavior made that difficult. When we were younger, he would break something and immediately call out, "Kelly did it." My parents rarely questioned his version of events. As we grew older, his lies became more sophisticated, but followed the same pattern. Derek made mistakes, I received blame. I developed coping mechanisms. I became self-sufficient, solving my own problems rather than seeking parental support that rarely materialized. I found sanctuary in art, spending hours sketching designs for imaginary houses and rooms. My notebooks filled with floor plans and color schemes, the worlds I created on paper, offering escape from the one I couldn't control. The one person who truly saw me was my grandmother Ruth, my mother's mother. During weekend visits to her small apartment, she would examine my drawings with genuine interest, asking questions about my choices and offering suggestions. She had worked as a seamstress in her younger years and taught me to appreciate textiles, colors, and the power of transforming spaces. "You see the world differently, Kelly," she would say, her arthritic fingers gently touching my sketches. "That's your gift. Never let anyone convince you it's a flaw." When I turned 13, the tensions at home intensified. My academic achievements continued to accumulate, and Derek's jealousy grew more pronounced. He began running with a troubling crowd at school, boys known for smoking behind the gymnasium and sneaking alcohol from their parents' liquor cabinets. His grades slipped further, yet somehow my parents blamed this on the pressure of following in his sister's footsteps, as if my success was the problem. One afternoon, I caught Derek rifling through our mother's purse. When I confronted him, he shoved past me and disappeared out the front door. Later that evening, when our mother discovered $40 missing, I reluctantly shared what I had seen. The family meeting that followed remains seared in my memory. "Kelly, this is a serious accusation," my father said, arms crossed over his chest. "I'm just telling you what I saw," I replied, voice small but certain. Derek's eyes filled with tears on cue. "I can't believe you'd make up something like this just because you're jealous that I made the baseball team and you got cut from volleyball." I hadn't even tried out for volleyball that year. My mother wrapped an arm around Derek's shoulders. "Kelly, I think you owe your brother an apology." I apologized not for telling the truth, but for disrupting family peace. That night began a pattern that would eventually destroy everything. The incident with my father's watch escalated things further. The antique pocket watch, a gift from his father, disappeared from his dresser. 3 days of searching followed before Derek discovered it in my desk drawer tucked beneath my sketchbooks. "I was looking to borrow a pencil," he explained, holding the watch as if it were evidence in a trial. The betrayal cut deep. "I would never take that. You know how much it means to Dad." My father's face hardened with disappointment. "Then explain how it got there." I couldn't. The watch had simply appeared, placed by hands not mine, but no one considered that possibility. My parents began watching me with new eyes, suspicious and wary. Locked doors were suddenly forbidden. Random inspections of my belongings became routine. Trust, already in short supply, evaporated completely. I sought refuge at my grandmother's apartment more frequently. Sitting at her kitchen table, I would pour out my frustrations while she listened without judgment. "People believe what's easiest, not what's true," she counseled me. "Sometimes we must wait for truth to make itself known." "What if it never does?" I asked. She squeezed my hand. "Then we make our own truth through how we live. Be the person you know yourself to be, Kelly. That's all anyone can do." That spring, I won the regional art competition with a conceptual design for an eco-friendly community center. The local newspaper featured my work, but my parents attended Derek's baseball game instead of the awards ceremony. My art teacher, Ms. Peterson, took photos and bought me ice cream afterward, telling me I had real talent. That small kindness sustained me through the silent dinner at home, where no one mentioned my achievement. It was around this time I became friends with Michael Stevens, a quiet boy from my advanced literature class. He shared my interest in design, though his focus was on fashion rather than interiors. We spent lunches discussing color theory and the relationship between space and emotion. For the first time, I had someone who spoke my language, who saw the world as canvas rather than competition. Our friendship quickly deepened into my first relationship. Michael understood my family situation without judgment, offering support instead of solutions. He became my confidant and safe harbor, the person I called after particularly difficult evenings at home. When Derek discovered us holding hands at the local mall, his expression darkened with something beyond ordinary brotherly protectiveness. Looking back now, I recognize it as the moment he began plotting in earnest. He didn't just want to discredit me. He wanted to destroy the happiness he couldn't seem to find himself. By my junior year of high school, I had positioned myself for college success. My GPA remained perfect despite the turbulence at home, and preliminary letters from universities showed interest in my academic record and portfolio. I allowed myself cautious optimism about escaping to a campus where my achievements would be celebrated rather than minimized. Meanwhile, Derek's high school experience was following a troubling trajectory. His sophomore year brought failing grades in 3 subjects and multiple detentions for skipping class. I discovered later that he had begun experimenting with marijuana and prescription pills, though at the time I only witnessed the symptoms: bloodshot eyes, mood swings, and increasing secrecy. Money continued to disappear around the house: $20 from the grocery fund, $50 from my father's wallet, my mother's silver bracelet, which she initially believed she had misplaced until it appeared at a local pawn shop. Each incident followed the same pattern. Suspicion fell on me despite lack of evidence, while Derek played innocent, or worse, joined in accusing me. One rainy Tuesday after school, I came home early with a headache and found Derek and 2 friends in our basement. The sweet, skunky smell was unmistakable, as was the small pipe being passed between them. When they noticed me on the stairs, the atmosphere shifted from relaxed to threatening. "What are you doing here?" Derek demanded. Eyes narrowed. I live here, I answered, already retreating. Don't worry, I'm going to my room. One of his friends, a tall boy with a patchy beard, blocked my exit. How do we know she won't tell? Derek approached his familiar face, suddenly unrecognizable with malice. She won't, because if she does, I'll make sure Mom and Dad find out about her secret meetings with Michael. I've seen what they do together. The insinuation hung in the air, an outright lie but an effective threat. Michael and I had never done more than kiss, but Derek knew exactly how to manipulate our parents' growing distrust. I don't care what you do, I said, pushing past them. Just keep it out of my space. That confrontation marked another escalation. Derek now knew I had actual evidence of his wrongdoing, which made me more dangerous to him. In retrospect, this was when his casual lies transformed into calculated destruction. That spring, my grandmother Ruth's health declined rapidly. Diagnosed with congestive heart failure, she moved into a nursing facility where I visited her every day after school. These visits provided both comfort and escape, even as I watched her once vibrant presence dim. She remained my strongest advocate, reminding me that truth had a way of revealing itself eventually. Promise me you'll hold on to who you are, she said during one visit, her breath labored between words. No matter what happens, that's something no one can take from you. I promised, not knowing how soon that resolve would be tested. While my attention was focused on my grandmother, Derek executed his most damaging plan. My father's credit card statement arrived with nearly $2,000 in unexplained charges. Online gaming purchases, expensive sneakers, and electronics delivered to our house during school hours when only my mother was home to receive them. The initial investigation seemed straightforward until my father found empty packaging in my closet and order confirmation emails in my email trash folder. The digital trail had been carefully constructed to lead directly to me, though I had touched neither the credit card nor the ordered items. The family meeting that followed was more like an inquisition. Just tell us the truth, my mother pleaded, tears streaming down her face. We can get you help if you'll just admit what you've done. I am telling the truth, I insisted, my own eyes burning. I never used Dad's credit card. I don't know how those boxes got in my closet. My father paced the living room, his disappointment curdling into anger. The evidence is right there, Kelly. Do you think we're stupid? The packages came here. The trash was in your room. Your email shows the orders. Derek sat silently on the couch, the picture of innocent concern. Only I could see the satisfied glint in his eyes, the slight upward curl of his lips when our parents weren't looking. Check the delivery dates, I suggested desperately. I was at the nursing home with Grandma every day after school. I couldn't have accepted any packages. Your mother was here to sign for them, my father countered. The point is that you ordered them using my stolen credit card information. The argument circled for hours, my denials growing more tearful as exhaustion set in. Nothing I said made any difference. The evidence, though planted, was too convincing. The next morning, my mother found 2 unopened bottles of vodka under my mattress during another routine check of my room. That afternoon, fake text messages appeared on my phone from someone listed as Dealer Dave, discussing payment for pills. My technology privileges were immediately revoked, my phone confiscated, further isolating me from any potential support. Michael tried to advocate for me when he heard what was happening. He came to our house after being unable to reach me, explaining to my parents that I was being framed, that the person they were describing wasn't the Kelly he knew. His loyalty only convinced them that he was part of whatever problems they believed I had. Stay away from our daughter, my father told him at the door. You're not welcome here anymore. The final ultimatum came after a week of escalating tensions. My parents sat me down in the living room, Derek conspicuously absent. We've given you every opportunity to come clean, my father said, his voice strained but determined. We've tried to understand what would drive you to steal from your own family. We're at the end of our rope, my mother added, not meeting my eyes. Either you admit what you've done and agree to the consequences, or we can't keep you in this house anymore. The consequences, I learned, included surrendering my college fund to repay the credit card charges, attending addiction counseling, and submitting to regular drug testing. all for crimes I hadn't committed. I can't admit to something I didn't do, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the terror building inside me. I'm telling you the truth. Derek is setting me up and you're letting him. My parents exchanged the look I'd grown to dread, the one that said they'd already made their decision before the conversation began. Then you leave us no choice, my father said. The night they threw me out remains the most vivid memory of my life, etched in perfect clarity despite the decades since. My parents had arranged what felt like a family tribunal in our living room. The formal seating arrangement said everything: my parents on the couch, Derek in the armchair, and me alone on the piano bench, physically separated from everyone else. We've tried everything with you, my father began, his voice heavy with rehearsed disappointment. We've been patient. We've given you chances. And this is how you repay us. Derek sat with his head bowed, occasionally wiping away tears that I'm now certain never actually fell. When he finally spoke, his performance was masterful, his voice cracking with apparent emotion. I don't even know who you are anymore, Kelly. I used to look up to you, but now… He paused dramatically. Finding out your own sister is stealing, doing drugs, selling Dad's things for money. It's like living with a stranger. None of that is true, I said, my voice thin but unwavering. I've never stolen anything, never touched drugs, never sold anything. Why won't anyone believe me? The accusations escalated beyond what even I had imagined. According to Derek, he had evidence I'd been stealing items from our house for months to finance a drug habit. The missing silver candlesticks from the dining room, Mother's pearl earrings, even small electronics that had mysteriously disappeared. We found this in your sketch pad, my mother said, pulling out a pawn shop receipt I had never seen before. My name was forged at the bottom. That's not my signature, I insisted, panic rising. I've never been to that pawn shop. This is crazy. My father's patience snapped. He stood abruptly, looming over me. Enough lies. We have proof, Kelly. We've caught you red-handed and you still can't be honest with us or yourself. What happened next haunts me still. My denial pushed him past restraint and he struck me across the face. The shock of it silenced the room. My mother gasped, but said nothing. Derek's eyes widened with something that might have been fear or satisfaction I couldn't tell through my tears. My cheek burning, I reached for the one person who might still believe me. I need to call Grandma Ruth, I said, moving toward the phone. Your grandmother is in intensive care, my mother said flatly. The doctors say the stress of your behavior has worsened her condition. You will not burden her with more of your problems. The calculated cruelty of using my grandmother's illness against me broke something inside. I tried calling Michael instead, but my father intercepted, ripping the phone cord from the wall. That boy is part of the problem, he growled. You will not drag anyone else into this mess you've created. What followed was a methodical dismantling of my existence in that house. My mother disappeared upstairs, returning with black garbage bags. One by one, they filled with my belongings, haphazardly packed without care. Books tossed in with toiletries. Framed photos with their glass now cracked. Art supplies crushed beneath winter boots. You can take what fits in these bags, my father announced. The rest stays. You've used up your right to anything more from us. I moved through this nightmare with strange detachment, as if watching it happen to someone else. I managed to secure my portfolio of designs, a few meaningful photos, essential clothing. Everything else, 16 years of accumulated life, remained scattered across my bedroom floor. As my parents carried the bags to the front door, Derek followed me into the hallway. Out of their earshot, his mask slipped completely. I always hated you, he whispered, his face inches from mine. Little Miss Perfect with her straight A's and her precious art. Now they finally see you for what you really are. Nothing. Get out and don't come back. The front door opened to a spring night turned hostile with unexpected rain. My father placed $200 on top of one garbage bag, my severance payment from childhood. When you're ready to get help and tell the truth, you can call us, he said, his voice stripped of all the warmth I once associated with home. My mother couldn't meet my eyes. This is for your own good, Kelly. Sometimes people need to hit bottom before they can climb back up. The door closed with finality, the lock turning loudly in the sudden silence. I stood on the porch where I had once played 16 years old, alone in the rain with 3 garbage bags containing the approved portions of my existence. The only certainty I had was that everything familiar was now lost to me. I dragged those bags 2 blocks before the cheap plastic split, spilling my clothes onto the wet sidewalk. Kneeling there trying to gather soaked shirts and pants, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. The tears came with such force I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't think beyond the overwhelming pain of absolute abandonment. When the worst of the sobbing subsided, I pulled my waterlogged sketchbook from one bag. Inside the cover, my grandmother had written, "To see beauty in everything is rare. To create beauty from nothing is rarer still. Never stop seeing. Never stop creating." I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and made the decision that would define the rest of my life. I would survive this. Not just survive, I would rebuild something better than what had been taken from me. I gathered what remained of my belongings and began walking toward Michael's house, uncertain of my welcome, but having nowhere else to turn. Michael's parents answered the door to find me drenched, clutching torn garbage bags, my face swollen from crying. Their initial shock quickly turned to concern, especially when they noticed the darkening mark on my cheek where my father's hand had struck. "My God, Kelly, what happened?" Michael's mother asked, ushering me inside. Between broken sobs, I explained as coherently as possible. To their credit, they listened without interruption, exchanging worried glances, but withholding judgment. When I finished, an uncomfortable silence filled their kitchen. "You can stay tonight, of course," Michael's father finally said, his discomfort evident. "But we should call your parents tomorrow. There must be some misunderstanding we can help clear up." Their attempt to contact my parents the next morning only confirmed my story. My father answered voice cold, informing them that I was no longer welcome in his home until I admitted my problems and accepted help. He warned them about harboring a troubled teenager and suggested they check their valuables regularly if they allowed me to stay. The conversation left Michael's parents in an impossible position. They sympathized with my situation but feared legal complications of housing a minor against her parents' wishes. They offered what they could: 2 weeks shelter, while I figured out next steps: use of their phone to find resources and daily meals. I could hardly eat through the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Those 2 weeks passed in a blur of desperate phone calls and rejection. Social services had limited options for someone in my situation. Without clear evidence of physical abuse beyond a single slap that left no lasting mark, I fell into a gray area of need. I wasn't homeless enough, wasn't abused enough, wasn't troubled enough to qualify for immediate placement. In my desperation, I turned to Ms. Peterson, my art teacher. She listened to my story with growing horror, then made some calls of her own. Through her network, she connected me with a youth advocacy program that helped teenagers in transitional situations. They found me a bed in a group home for girls and helped me enroll in a work program that allowed me to continue attending my original high school. The group home was clean, but institutional housing 8 girls in similar circumstances. Some had fled abuse, others had parents in prison or rehab, and one had been abandoned by her mother at a bus station. We shared bedrooms and bathrooms, ate meals together at a scratched wooden table, and learned to lock away anything of value. It wasn't home, but it was shelter, and the staff, though overworked, treated us with basic dignity. I found part-time work at Maggie's coffee shop 6 blocks from the group home. For minimum wage, I washed dishes, swept floors, and eventually learned to make the standard drinks. The owner, Sarah, took a chance on me despite my age and complicated situation. She became my first mentor in the adult world, teaching me not just about customer service and inventory management, but about resilience in the face of setbacks. "I was homeless at 17, she told me one slow afternoon. Lived in my car for 8 months before I got on my feet. Now I own this place. Remember that when things feel impossible." Balancing work and school exhausted me, but I maintained my grades through sheer determination. My teachers noticed the change in my circumstances. and most showed subtle kindness, extended deadlines when needed, occasional rides to work, quiet check-ins about my well-being. I learned to accept help without shame, to recognize the difference between pity and compassion. 1 month after being thrown out, I found myself walking past my former home. I hadn't planned the detour, but something pulled me toward the familiar street. I stood across the road, partially hidden by a neighbor's maple tree, watching as my family emerged for what appeared to be a dinner out. They looked unchanged, laughing together as they climbed into the car. My father's hand rested affectionately on Derek's shoulder. My mother smiled carefree in a way I rarely remembered. They drove away without ever noticing me, continuing their lives as if I had never existed. That moment crystallized something important: they weren't missing me. The space I had occupied had closed seamlessly behind me. I was grieving a family that had already moved on. The final blow came 2 weeks later when a counselor at the group home informed me that my grandmother Ruth had passed away. The funeral had already occurred. No one had notified me. When I called my parents' house from the counselor's office, the answering machine picked up. I left a message asking about my grandmother's memorial service but received no response. That night I cried until physical exhaustion claimed me. But the next morning I made a promise to myself I would build a life so undeniably successful that the people who had discarded me would one day reckon with their mistake. It wasn't about revenge, but about justifying my own existence. Despite my circumstances, luck occasionally found me. A community foundation offered scholarships for students with significant life challenges, and my art teacher helped me apply. The modest grant covered basic courses at the community college where I enrolled in fundamental design classes while finishing high school. Sarah from the coffee shop introduced me to her brother-in-law, who managed a small interior design firm downtown. He needed an office assistant, someone to answer phones, file paperwork, and run errands. The pay barely covered my expenses, but the experience proved invaluable. During lunch breaks and after hours, I observed the designers at work absorbing techniques and terminology. When they discarded material samples, I collected them, creating my own reference library in the small room I now rented in an elderly woman's house. At 19, I had completed my first year of college courses, moved from the group home to a shared apartment with 2 other working students, and advanced from office assistant to design apprentice. The road ahead remained daunting, but I had established a foundation from which to build. Over the next few years, I worked multiple jobs while earning my associate degree in interior design. I answered phones during the day, waited tables at night, and took on small design projects for friends of friends on weekends. Each completed project, no matter how small, went into my growing portfolio. My first significant opportunity came at 22, when a regular customer at the restaurant where I worked evenings mentioned renovating his cafe. On impulse, I offered to show him some ideas. Using my minimal savings, I created professional quality renderings and a detailed proposal that came in under his budget. He hired me, taking a chance on my youth and hunger to prove myself. The cafe renovation succeeded beyond expectations, featured in a local lifestyle magazine that highlighted its innovative use of limited space and budget-friendly materials. That single article generated 3 new clients, allowing me to reduce my restaurant hours and focus more on design work. I learned to navigate the business aspects of design contracts, vendor relationships, client management. Every mistake became a lesson, every success a stepping stone. I discovered that my childhood training in anticipating needs and managing difficult personalities translated perfectly to client relations. The hypervigilance that had once been a survival mechanism became an asset in my professional life. By 25, I had established a modest reputation in Boston's design community. My specialty became transforming challenging spaces into functional, beautiful environments without extravagant budgets. I still worked from my apartment, but now had a dedicated client list and steady income. Looking back now, those early years taught me self-reliance in ways no comfortable upbringing could have. Each obstacle overcome reinforced my belief that I could survive whatever came next. The pain never fully disappeared, but it transformed into something useful, a reminder of my capacity to endure and rebuild. When I turned 28, my business had grown enough to require actual office space. I rented a small storefront in an up-and-coming neighborhood, hired my first employee, a design school graduate named Jamie, who reminded me of myself at that age, and officially launched Kelly Morgan Designs with a proper website and business cards. That same year brought Jonathan into my life. We met at an architectural salvage warehouse where we both reached for the same vintage doorknob. His laugh at the coincidence caught me off guard, warm and genuine without pretense. As an architect specializing in sustainable building practices, he understood my work in a way few others could. Our coffee meeting to discuss potential collaboration turned into dinner, then regular dates, then a partnership that extended beyond business. Jonathan was patient with my guardedness, never pushing for more than I could give emotionally. When I finally shared my full history one night, sprawled across his apartment floor, with design plans forgotten between us, he listened without interruption. No platitudes, no excessive sympathy, just quiet understanding followed by practical support. "Your family lost something irreplaceable when they let you go," he said simply. "Their loss, my gain." Within 2 years, we married in a small ceremony attended by the chosen family we'd both constructed, his parents who had welcomed me without reservation, colleagues who had become friends, mentors who had guided our careers. The absence of blood relatives stung less than I expected, cushioned by the authentic connections surrounding us. Our relocation to Seattle came after Jonathan received an offer to join a prestigious architectural firm specializing in eco-conscious commercial buildings. The decision to leave Boston meant rebuilding my client base from scratch, but also offered liberation from the shadow of my past. No one in Seattle knew me as the abandoned daughter or troubled teenager. I arrived as Kelly Morgan, respected designer and wife of a talented architect. The West Coast embraced my aesthetic, which had evolved to incorporate natural elements with clean, functional spaces. My new studio in downtown Seattle quickly attracted clients looking for something beyond standard corporate or residential design. My specialty became creating environments that told stories through thoughtful details and unexpected materials. The business expanded rapidly, necessitating more employees and a larger studio. Kelly Morgan Designs became recognized in regional design publications, then national ones. Projects grew in scope and budget. What had once been a survival mechanism had transformed into a thriving enterprise. When I discovered I was pregnant at 30, complicated emotions surfaced. Parenthood had always seemed a distant possibility, shadowed by fears of repeating patterns I'd experienced. Jonathan held space for my anxieties, never dismissing them or offering false reassurances. "You're not your parents," he reminded me during a particularly difficult night of doubt. "You've spent your life building something different. Trust that." Our daughter Sophia arrived in spring, perfect and terrifying in her complete dependence. Holding her, I made silent promises to protect her from the abandonment I had known, to create a home where truth was valued above convenience, where her voice would always be heard. As Sophia grew, so did my company's reputation. A commission to design the interiors for a new luxury hotel chain put my work in multiple cities across the country. The project demanded extensive travel, but established Kelly Morgan Designs as a name recognized beyond regional markets. During a business trip to New York for the hotel project, I literally collided with Michael while rushing through Grand Central Station. The odds seemed impossible in a city of millions, yet there he stood, as surprised as I was by our reunion. We found a nearby cafe and spent hours catching up on the decades since we'd last spoken. His news about my family came without warning. "Derek's in prison," he said, watching my reaction carefully. "Has been for about 2 years now. Fraud mainly, but they found drugs too. Your parents mortgaged their house for his legal fees." The information landed strangely less satisfying than I might once have imagined. "And my parents?" I asked, uncertain what answer I wanted. "Still in the same house. Your dad retired early. Health problems, I think." Michael hesitated. "They know about your success, Kelly. My mom runs into your mother occasionally at the grocery store. She's mentioned your magazine features the hotel chain. Your mother never responds, just changes the subject. Too proud, maybe, or too ashamed." That night in my hotel room, I dreamed of my childhood home walking through empty rooms calling for people who never answered. I woke disoriented, reaching for Jonathan across 3,000 miles of separation. The conversation with Michael had disturbed sediment I thought had long settled. Upon returning to Seattle, I found myself struggling with unexpected emotional aftershocks. Nightmares returned. Certain triggers, a man's cologne that resembled my father's, a teenager's laughter that echoed Derek's, would send me into momentary panic. Jonathan suggested I consider therapy, gently pointing out that success hadn't healed everything. Dr. Marshall helped me recognize that I'd built my life around proving my worth, around being so exceptional that my family's rejection would seem objectively wrong. What would it mean, she asked during one session, to be worthy of love and belonging without exceptional achievement? That question initiated a different kind of rebuilding. I began examining the scaffolding of my identity, discerning which parts existed to disprove my family's assessment, and which represented my authentic self. The process proved painful but necessary, allowing me to separate my passion for design from my need for validation. As this internal work progressed, my professional success continued to expand. Architectural Digest featured our renovation of a historic Pacific Northwest resort, praising the seamless integration of contemporary function with preserved character. The exposure generated international inquiries and solidified our reputation in the hospitality sector. Jonathan and I welcomed our second child, a son we named Leo, completing our family of 4. Our home in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood became everything I had dreamed of creating, open and warm, filled with light and thoughtfully selected objects that told our family's story. Watching my children grow in an environment of unconditional love and encouragement healed parts of me I hadn't realized remained wounded. When Sophia brought home an art project proudly, I made sure she saw my genuine admiration reflected back. When Leo struggled with reading, we found ways to support his learning without making him feel deficient. I became the parent I had needed, breaking cycles of conditional approval and emotional abandonment. By my early 40s, I had achieved more than the angry, determined 16-year-old dragging garbage bags through the rain could have imagined. Kelly Morgan Designs employed 15 people across offices in Seattle and Los Angeles. Our portfolio included award-winning hotels, restaurants, and commercial spaces throughout North America. Financial security had replaced constant worry. Professional respect had replaced desperate striving for validation. More importantly, I had created a family built on trust and open communication. Jonathan and I celebrated 17 years of partnership that grew stronger through challenges and successes alike. Our children, now teenagers themselves, moved through the world with confidence I had never known at their age. I had survived, then thrived, then transcended the narrative written for me by others. The abandoned daughter had become a successful businesswoman, loving wife, devoted mother, and recognized creative force. I had proven myself not just to the world, but finally to myself. Which is why when the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon in my 46th year, I felt genuine curiosity rather than dread as I moved to answer it. The faces that greeted me on my doorstep belonged to strangers who were somehow still familiar. My father's tall frame had curved with age, his once commanding presence diminished by time and illness. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had surrendered to natural gray, deep lines, marking where her smile had once appeared. And Derek, the golden child whose lies had exiled me, his handsome features had hardened his eyes, carrying the haunted look of someone who had seen the consequences of his actions return to him tenfold. For a moment, none of us spoke. 30 years of absence stretched between us, filled with all that had been lost, and all that had been built in separate worlds. Kelly, my mother finally said, her voice breaking on those 2 syllables. My father cleared his throat, discomfort evident in his shifting posture. May we come in? Please, we've come a long way. Wordlessly, I stepped aside, allowing these strangers who had once been my family to enter the home I had created without them. I led them to our living room, bright with afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Puget Sound. The space I had designed reflected everything I valued: warmth, openness, honesty in materials and forms. Nothing hidden, nothing false. My father lowered himself carefully onto our sofa, wincing slightly with the movement. My mother sat beside him, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Derek remained standing, his gaze moving around the room, taking in the evidence of my success. "Your home is beautiful," my mother offered, breaking the silence. "Just like the magazine showed." "You've seen the magazine features?" I asked, surprised, despite Michael's information years earlier. My father nodded. "We've followed your career for years. At first, just clippings from the Boston papers when someone mentioned your name. Later, we subscribed to the design magazines. We have a file with everything we could find." The admission struck me as both touching and disturbing, this secret surveillance of a life they had chosen not to participate in directly. "Why are you here?" I asked. Deciding directness was the only approach I could manage. Derek stepped forward, then visibly bracing himself. "I'm dying, Kelly. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors give me 3 to 6 months." His voice, once so effective at crafting lies, now carried the unmistakable weight of truth. "Before I go, I needed to face what I did to you, what I took from you." My breath caught the news landing like a physical blow despite our estrangement. "I'm sorry to hear that." I managed the words, inadequate but sincere. "I don't want your pity," Derek said quickly. "I don't deserve it. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that." He paused, struggling visibly. "But I have to try to explain, not to excuse it, but so you understand what really happened." What followed was a confession 3 decades overdue. Derek described how his childhood jealousy had evolved into resentment, then active sabotage. The missing money, the planted evidence, the fabricated stories, all confirmed in exhaustive detail. He admitted to destroying my belongings, intercepting college acceptance letters, even creating false email accounts in my name to order items with my father's stolen credit card information. "I hated that everything came so easily to you," he said, voice hollow. "Your grades, your talent, your focus. I felt worthless in comparison, so I made it my mission to make everyone see you the way I thought they should." My parents sat listening to these confessions with expressions of dawning horror, as if hearing some details for the first time. Perhaps they were. "After you were gone, things fell apart," my mother said softly. Derek's behavior worsened. The stealing continued. We finally realized what must have happened, but by then, her voice trailed off. "By then, your pride wouldn't let you admit you'd thrown away your innocent daughter." I finished for her, the words sharp but not unkind. My father's eyes filled with tears, something I had never witnessed in my childhood. "We failed you completely, Kelly. There's no excuse for what we did. We chose the easier explanation over the truth because it was convenient. We abandoned you when we should have protected you." Derek continued his story, detailing his descent into addiction and criminal behavior after I left. The progressively serious legal troubles, the multiple rehab attempts, the 2 prison sentences for fraud and drug distribution. With each revelation, my parents seemed to physically shrink the weight of these decades visible in their posture. When I got the cancer diagnosis, Derek said, "Something broke open in me. I couldn't die with this still between us. I couldn't leave this world without telling you and them the truth." My father did something then that I could never have imagined in my most vindictive fantasies. He lowered himself from the sofa to his knees, his movements stiff with age and emotion. My mother joined him, both of them kneeling before me in my own living room. "We don't deserve your forgiveness," my father said, voice thick with tears. "But we're begging for it anyway. We threw away our daughter for a lie, and there hasn't been a day since realizing the truth that I haven't hated myself for it." My mother reached for my hand, hesitating before making contact. "We failed you so completely. We can never make it right. But please know that we have regretted it every day." In that moment, I felt a strange detachment from the scene before me. These people kneeling on my carefully selected area rug had once been the center of my world, their approval my highest aim. Now they appeared small, diminished not just by age, but by the magnitude of their mistake. I had imagined this moment during my darkest times, pictured their remorse and apologies with vengeful satisfaction. The reality felt hollow anticlimactic. Their regret changed nothing about the frightened 16-year-old girl in the rain. Their recognition of my success couldn't restore the lost years, the absent guidance, the missed milestones. "I need some air," I said, rising and walking to the deck overlooking the water. Behind me, I heard them settling back onto the furniture, murmuring amongst themselves. Standing alone, watching boats cross the Sound, I felt Jonathan's presence before he spoke. He had given us privacy but remained within reach, knowing instinctively that I might need support. "You okay?" he asked, simply coming to stand beside me. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel," I admitted. I spent years fantasizing about them showing up to beg forgiveness. Now they're here and I just feel nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just nothing. He nodded, understanding as always. "You don't owe them any particular reaction. Whatever you're feeling or not feeling is valid." "Derek is dying," I heard. His hand found mine, warm and solid. "What do you need?" The question brought unexpected clarity. "I need to talk to our children before they get back from their friends' houses. I need to decide how to handle this without creating more damage." Our teenagers. Sophia, now 16, and Leo, 14, knew only the basics about my estrangement from my birth family. We had never lied to them, but had provided age-appropriate explanations as they grew. They knew I had been forced to leave home young, that their grandparents had made serious mistakes, but not the devastating details. When I returned to the living room with Jonathan beside me, my resolve had strengthened. "I can't give you what you're looking for today," I told my parents and brother. 30 years can't be undone in an afternoon conversation. Their faces fell, but they nodded with resignation. "But," I continued, surprising myself, "I am willing to listen more, to understand what happened after I left. Not today. I need time to process this visit. My family will be home soon, and they deserve to be introduced to this situation carefully." Hope flickered across my mother's tired face. "You have children. 2 teenagers." I answered the simple fact, revealing how much of my life they had missed. "They know about you, but not everything. I've been careful not to pass my pain to them." My father nodded, tears falling freely now. "You were always wiser than we gave you credit for." We arranged to meet again the following weekend. They had taken a hotel room nearby, planning to stay in Seattle for 2 weeks. Derek's medical treatments allowed limited travel, but he had insisted on making this journey while he still could. After they left, Jonathan held me while I experienced the delayed emotional reaction their visit had triggered. Not the vindication I had once imagined, but a complex grief for all that had been lost. The family that should have been the support that never came, the relationship with my brother. That jealousy had poisoned beyond recovery. When our children returned home, we sat them down for an honest conversation. Their reactions reflected their personalities. Sophia, artistic and passionate like me, expressed immediate outrage on my behalf. Leo, more analytical and measured like his father, asked practical questions about what this meant for our family going forward. "They're your blood relatives," Sophia said, processing the revelation. "But they're not really your family, are they?" "We are." "Family comes in many forms," I explained. "The people who raised me made terrible mistakes that hurt me deeply. But holding on to that hurt doesn't serve me anymore." "Are you going to forgive them?" Leo asked, his young face serious. I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending something never happened or that it wasn't wrong. It means freeing yourself from carrying the weight of it forever. So yes, I think I am working toward forgiveness, not for their benefit, but for mine. The following weekend, my parents and Derek returned to our home. This time, Jonathan and our children joined us. Watching my mother tentatively interact with her grandchildren, seeing my father's eyes widen at Sophia's portfolio of artwork, so reminiscent of my early sketches, I recognized that while the past couldn't be undone, something new might still be possible. During that visit, Derek asked to speak with me privately. On our deck overlooking the water, he struggled to find words before finally saying, "I always thought beating you would make me feel better about myself. Instead, it destroyed everyone, including me. Why did you hate me so much? I asked the question that had haunted me since childhood. Because you were everything I wasn't, he answered simply. Talented, focused, strong. I felt invisible beside you, so I tried to make you disappear instead. No excuse could justify what he had done, but understanding the broken thinking behind it offered a different kind of closure. This man before me, hollowed by illness and regret, bore little resemblance to the brother who had orchestrated my exile. His impending death rendered revenge not just pointless, but impossible. I don't hate you anymore. I told him the truth, surprising me as I spoke it. I stopped hating you when I realized that living well was the best response to what happened. My life is good, Derek. Despite everything, maybe even because of it, I built something beautiful. He nodded, tears tracking down his gaunt face. You deserved better than what we gave you. I'm sorry I can't do more to make it right. Over the next few months, we established a cautious relationship with my parents. Weekly phone calls, occasional visits when Derek's health permitted travel. They met Jonathan's parents, who regarded them with polite reserve, protective of the daughter-in-law they had embraced when her own family failed her. One meaningful pilgrimage occurred when I accompanied my parents to visit my grandmother Ruth's grave. Standing before the simple headstone, my mother finally told me about her last days, how she had continued asking for me until the end. She never believed you were guilty, my mother admitted, placing flowers on the grave. She told us we would regret what we'd done to you. She was right, as she usually was. Derek passed away that winter, 3 months after their initial visit. Despite everything, I arranged the funeral feeling it was something my grandmother would have wanted me to do. The service was small, attended primarily by my parents' remaining friends. Most of Derek's former associates were unavailable, some still incarcerated, others lost to the same addictions that had contributed to his downfall. Standing at his graveside, I felt an unexpected peace. The brother I had both loved and feared was gone, his demons finally quieted. The cycle of harm he had initiated had ended not with revenge, but with its opposite, compassion he had never managed to show me. My parents continued their efforts at reconciliation, moving to Seattle 6 months after Derek's funeral to be closer to us. We established boundaries that respected the complexity of our history. They became peripheral but present figures in our family life, not central as they might have been without the decades of separation, but no longer entirely absent either. As my story reaches its conclusion, I realize that life rarely delivers the neat resolutions we crave. The family that cast me out has returned, humbled by time and consequence. The success I built to prove my worth ultimately mattered less than the love I created with the family of my choosing. The greatest lesson I've learned through this journey is that life isn't about who was right or wrong in some distant argument. It's about how we recover from wounds, whether inflicted by others or by our own mistakes. It's about recognizing that while we cannot control our beginnings, we hold tremendous power over our endings. True freedom comes not from revenge or vindication, but from releasing the need for either. I found my real family not in shared DNA, but in chosen connections, the husband who supports without judgment, the children who love without condition, the friends who show up when needed most. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted betrayed you, or found family in unexpected places when your original one failed you? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest healing comes from knowing we aren't alone in our experiences. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that. Rebuilding is always possible, no matter what's been destroyed. Thank you for listening to my journey from abandonment to forgiveness. Remember, the family that truly matters is the one that chooses to love you every single day.